The year is 1942. The scorching sands of North Africa were the stage for a brutal, conventional war. Tank battles, supply lines, and tactical advances. But underneath the dust and the high-stakes conflict between Rommel and Montgomery, another, far stranger war was being fought. A war for artifacts, for forbidden knowledge, and for a technological edge that the German High Command believed resided not in laboratories, but in ancient ruins. This is the story of Project Schwarz-Sonne, or Black Sun, an operation so bizarre and so sensitive that its records were shredded by the SS and classified by the Allies immediately after the war. Our investigation begins with a unit known only in fragmented Allied intercepts as Sonderkommando V, a specialized SS detachment composed not of soldiers, but of archaeologists, linguists, and occult specialists, all operating directly under the infamous Ahnenerbe, the Nazi ancestral heritage branch that blurred science with mysticism. Their destination was the unforgiving, deep Libyan Desert, a region far removed from the official combat zones, where few maps dared to go. Their mission, documented in one surviving, mutilated log entry dated March 1942, locate the primary resonant chamber of the T-cult. The T-cult, or Thule cult, was a reference the Ahnenerbe used for a supposed pre-human civilization that predated the ancient Egyptians, a culture they believed possessed energy secrets that could redefine the term weapon of mass destruction. The entire expedition was classified above the rank of Field Marshal, marked with a double Geheim stamp. Why did the Third Reich divert vital resources, fuel, specialized vehicles, and elite personnel to chase an archaeological ghost when their campaign in Egypt was faltering? Because the stakes were beyond conventional victory. They sought the Black Sun device, a rumored source of unlimited, non-conventional energy that the Ahnenerbe believed would grant them irreversible global dominance, turning the war from a logistical nightmare into a sudden, mystical triumph. The genesis of Project Schwarz-Sonne lies in Berlin, 1939, specifically in the notes of SS Obersturmbannführer Otto Rahn, a leading Ahnenerbe figure obsessed with ancient energy sources. Rahn's research, which was later removed from the official Berlin archives, pointed toward a specific geographic location in the Libyan Desert, a point of convergence for ancient electromagnetic lines. This point was identified on a crude, pre-war archaeological map as the City of Silence, a structure buried entirely beneath the moving sands. Rahn's theory was audacious. This city was the power source for the T-cult, and the Black Sun device was its primary reactor. The SS was convinced that standard physics could be overridden by tapping into this ancient source. The Sonderkommando V was dispatched not just to excavate, but to activate the device. We have retrieved a heavily water-damaged German maintenance log for a specialized armored half-track, designated Wassenfuchs Desert Fox. The log shows that the vehicle was loaded not with ammunition or fuel, but with complex, bespoke electrical equipment, heavy insulated cables, and an array of crystalline components. Items that strongly suggest a high-voltage, experimental operation, not a simple archaeological dig. This log is the single most compelling physical evidence of the mission's technological, non-archaeological focus. The sheer complexity of the equipment suggests the SS wasn't just collecting relics. They were preparing to re-engineer an ancient power station. They traversed 600 kilometers of brutal, uncharted desert, a feat of logistics that went completely unrecorded in the Afrika Korps official movements. This geographical black hole in the German deployment history is our first confirmation that this mission was utterly compartmentalized, shielded from even Rommel's knowledge, solely serving the bizarre occult ambitions of the SS. The Allied intelligence response to this shadowy operation provides the second layer of secrecy. While the British 8th Army was focused on El Alamein, a tiny covert unit of the Long Range Desert Group, LRDG, was dispatched, completely off the books, to monitor the activity. This was not a standard reconnaissance mission. The unit's objective was codenamed Operation Sandglass. The surviving LRDG diary fragments, recovered years later from a private collection in Cairo, speak of strange aerial anomalies and static interference. Sergeant James Collins, the team leader, notes in his log on April 14, 1942, saw their convoy. Looks like a circus of mad scientists, but heard something stranger. Static on the wireless, not normal. Sounded like a chorus, but made of electricity. The LRDEG was instructed to avoid direct engagement unless the Germans attempted to move a large, non-metallic object. This specific directive, focusing on a non-metallic object, hints that the Allied High Command had a terrifying, though likely incomplete, understanding of the Black Sun device's nature. They knew the threat was not conventional, but the LRDG patrol soon encountered a problem that forced their own erasure from the records. Their log abruptly ceases in May 1942. The last entry reads, "They found it. The air is shaking. We are too close to the resonance." The transmission was cut midward. Unlike Operation Meteor, where the entire unit vanished, the LRDG patrol left a trail of physical wreckage. Later British sweeps found their modified Chevrolet truck completely abandoned. The engine block was intact, but the entire cabin, including the radio and the leather seats, was fused into a bizarre, crystalline sludge. This physical evidence was so alarming that it immediately triggered a full, top-level classification, marked Code Black, removing Operation Sandglass from all LRDG records. The site itself, the alleged City of Silence, was found only by analyzing the intersecting magnetic anomalies recorded by Collins' defunct radio. The SS Sonderkommando V had successfully reached their objective. The site was not a traditional ruin, but an immense, underground structure, accessed through a massive, carved stone entrance that had been exposed by a rare sandstorm. The critical information about the interior comes from a highly compromised source: the interrogation of a captured low-level Wehrmacht engineer, Lieutenant Dieter Kessel, who had been seconded to the Schwarzschild project for logistical support. Kessel's testimony, sealed by the U.S. in 1947, describes a massive chamber, perfectly circular, with walls made of a glassy, basalt-like material. In the center, suspended by a network of heavy cables, was the device itself. Kessel described it simply as a smooth, black sphere pulsing with internal light. He claimed the object was not metallic, but an entirely unknown, dense material that emitted a constant, low-level vibration. This sphere, the core of the Black Sun device, was the target of the activation equipment loaded onto the Waffenfässer. The Ahnenerbe experts believe that by flooding the sphere with high-voltage current at the resonant chamber's specific frequency, they could unlock its power. Kessel testified that the chief Ahnenerbe physicist, Dr. Karl Haushofer, was elated, believing they were minutes from creating a controlled, localized event horizon. This is where the story shifts from archaeology to existential danger. Kessel's final, desperate words in the interrogation were about the sound. He said the low vibration, once amplified by the power equipment, was not a sound but a pressure that squeezed the air out of the room. He witnessed the initial activation, and what he describes next is the reason this entire file was buried. What Kessel saw during the activation was not a conventional explosion, but a sudden, localized collapse of light. He claimed the sphere began to glow intensely, but then the surrounding air became instantly dark, as if the light itself was being consumed by the device. The air pressure dropped violently. The SS personnel closest to the sphere began to collapse, not from shrapnel or heat, but from what Kessel could only describe as an internal vacuum. The most terrifying detail is that the men's equipment, their weapons, helmets, and even the metallic parts of the Waffenfässer did not explode, but began to twist and deform towards the sphere, as if drawn by an impossible, localized gravity. Kessel, who was positioned near the entrance, managed to escape the collapse zone. He confirmed the successful activation, but also the immediate catastrophic failure, resulting in the annihilation of Sonderkommando V. The final radio signal sent from the Schwarzschild site was intercepted by a distant Italian communications post, marked by the Italian High Command as incomprehensible. It was a burst of unintelligible, high-frequency static followed by one clear word in German, repeated in a panicked tone: "Absorbiert." Absorb. This signal, the last word ever recorded from the Black Sun expedition, confirms Kessel's testimony. The SS unit was not killed. They were absorbed by the ancient device, victims of an unknown force that defied all known laws of physics. Kessel's testimony was officially debunked as desert hysteria by Allied officials, but its contents were used to justify the immediate, intense campaign to find and seal the site, a desperate cleanup operation that Allied textbooks still do not mention. The catastrophic activation witnessed by Lieutenant Kessel led to an immediate, silent cover-up campaign by both Axis and Allied forces, confirming the existential threat posed by the Black Sun device. The German High Command, realizing the weapon was too volatile and unpredictable to control, ordered the site sealed. The official order, marked Ahnenerbe, Cicerung in Africa, commanded that all excavation tunnels be collapsed and the entire area be seeded with unexploded ordnance to deter Allied exploration. This final, desperate act of destruction confirms that the German objective shifted from activation to containment. They failed to harness the power, and they immediately moved to erase the disaster. However, the Allies were already moving. Following the chilling final transmission from the LRDG unit, Operation Sandglass was immediately replaced by a new, highly specialized recovery mission, Operation Obsidian. This mission involved a small, hand-picked unit of British Royal Engineers and American OSS technical experts. Their objective, contrary to standard military practice, was not to destroy the Nazi installation, but to locate, map, and hermetically seal the ancient structure. This proves that the Allies had shifted their focus from conventional warfare to mitigating a scientific catastrophe. We found the only surviving mission report from Operation Obsidian, a tightly bound document marked Obsidian, a 42 final. The report states that upon reaching this city of silence, they found no signs of conventional combat, confirming Kessel's testimony. They found a massive stone entrance partially collapsed, but the interior resonance chamber was intact. The most unsettling finding was the Wassenfuch's half-track. The report describes the armored vehicle as having been subjected to an impossible gravitational or energetic force. The metal hull was compressed and twisted towards the chamber entrance, defying the physical laws governing conventional explosions. The report from Operation Obsidian confirms the chilling details about the Black Sun device's residual effect. The OSS technical team noted that the air within the chamber still held a highly unusual electromagnetic signature, fluctuating wildly at low-level frequencies. The most crucial discovery was made by Captain Arthur Finch, the lead engineer. He located the primary electrical cable, which the Germans had used to attempt activation, leading from the Wassenfuchs to the suspended Black Sun sphere. The cable was not burnt or cut. It was cleanly and perfectly vitrified, turned into a translucent glass-like rod for a length of several meters. This phenomenon, which defies conventional electrical failure, suggests a localized, super-intense energy transfer, likely a controlled plasma or a highly focused sonic wave that instantaneously altered the material's molecular structure. Finch's conclusion, which was immediately redacted and blacked out in the released files, stated, "The device does not utilize energy. It accesses and manipulates space-time. The collapse witnessed was a localized gravity well effect, likely the resonant chamber converting high voltage into a field of extreme compression." This is the moment the Allied command realized they were dealing with a force that surpassed all existing wartime technology, a device that could potentially weaponize gravity itself. The original plan for Operation Obsidian was immediately aborted. Instead of mapping the structure, they performed an emergency sealing, using tons of sand and concrete and deliberately triggering the remaining German ordnance to collapse the entire complex, ensuring the City of Silence would remain silent forever. The true reason for the erasure of Project Schwarzschild from history was not just to hide Nazi occult interests, but to suppress the knowledge that an ancient, operational gravity weapon existed on Earth. The biggest historical paradox of Project Schwarzschild is the mystery of the missing Ahnenerbe leadership. After the catastrophic activation, SS Obersturmbannführer Otto Rahn and Dr. Karl Haushofer, the two driving forces behind the expedition, were never accounted for in any subsequent Allied or Axis records. Their disappearance was total, raising the possibility that they were victims of the absorption, just like the Sonderkommando V. However, a later investigation into the liquidation of the Ahnenerbe headquarters in Berlin revealed a small, personal safe belonging to Rahn that had been overlooked. Inside, among personal effects, was a final handwritten note dated 2 days after the Italian absorbiert intercept. This note suggests Rahn survived and escaped the immediate disaster. The note reads, "The resonance is unstable. It provides the pathway, not the power. We must locate the stabilizer. The desert is a tomb. Heading east, Wunderwaffe is ready." The term Wunderwaffe, wonder weapon, is standard, but the reference to this stabilizer suggests that the Black Sun device was merely one half of the ancient weapon system, and that Rahn successfully gained intelligence on the location of the second necessary component. This throws the entire accepted timeline into chaos. Rahn was not absorbed. He was running a new, highly classified operation, taking the lethal knowledge of the Black Sun's instability with him. The Allies knew Rahn was dangerous, but the scale of the subsequent search operation, spanning from Greece to the Caucasus, was so vast that it became a secondary, undeclared campaign of the war. The search for Rahn and the stabilizer immediately entangled the Soviets, adding a third, fatal layer to the secret. US and British intelligence files show a high-level, post-war exchange between Washington and London regarding an unconfirmed Soviet anomaly. The report, labeled Project Nightingale, concerned Soviet activity in the Carpathian Mountains in 1944. Soviet NKVD units were suddenly deployed in massive numbers to a remote, historically insignificant region of Romania, actively excavating an ancient Dacian site. The Soviet official reason was mining operations, but their activity was far too targeted and rapid for simple resource extraction. Our investigation uncovered a fragmented NKVD aerial photograph from 1944. It shows the excavation site, dominated not by mining equipment, but by a massive, freshly exposed black basalt slab covered in geometric carvings. The carvings bear striking, unmistakable similarity to the non-Egyptian, angular script the Ahnenerbe used to identify the T-cult. This provides compelling, circumstantial evidence that Rahn's flight east succeeded in locating the stabilizer, and that the Soviets, monitoring every German move, swiftly intervened. The immediate, violent Soviet seizure of the site suggests they had obtained the same intelligence as Rahn, understanding that the ancient artifact was necessary to control the volatile gravitational field of the Black Sun device. The Allied cover-up was now a complex, three-way conspiracy. The British and Americans hiding the existence of the gravity weapon, the Germans hiding their catastrophic failure, and the Soviets securing the crucial stabilizing component. The final block of the Operation Obsidian file contains the only recorded contact between the Allied teams and the Soviet forces regarding the Black Sun project. The OSS sent a highly guarded diplomatic inquiry to the NKVD in 1946, referencing the unusual activities in the Carpathian region and the potential for uncontrolled resonant energy. The Soviet response, officially delivered by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, was chillingly brief and absolute. The energy is contained. The site is irrelevant. All historical accounts relating to German activity in North Africa have been permanently closed. This confirms that by 1946, the Soviets had successfully secured the stabilizer component and had assumed control over the entire technological secret. The Black Sun was now a Red Star asset. The American and British high commands, realizing they had lost the technological race, immediately initiated the final, absolute historical obliteration of Project Schwarzsahn. The key takeaway from this final phase of the investigation is that the LRDEG and the Sonderkommando V were just pawns. The real prize, the gravitational weapon system, was split into two parts: the volatile sphere in the desert and the stabilizer in the Carpathians. the Soviets secured the stabilizer, rendering the desert sphere inert and controllable. The historical consequence is staggering. The most advanced, frightening weapon system of World War II was not nuclear, but based on manipulating gravity, and its existence became the most guarded secret of the early Cold War, directly informing the U.S. focus on deep underground testing and satellite resonance, a response to a forgotten Nazi occult project. The true horror of Project Schwarzsahn is that the weapon they sought was real, and it simply changed hands, becoming the silent foundation of the subsequent global standoff. The story ends not in defeat, but in transfer. The Soviet seizure of the stabilizer in the Carpathian Mountains transformed Project Schwarzsahn from a chaotic German failure into a highly refined, controlled Soviet asset. The NKVD immediately established a new, ultra-secret facility at the excavation site, labeled Object 714. The primary goal was to understand how to safely integrate the stabilizer component with the volatile desert sphere, realizing the dream of a controlled gravitational weapon. We located a single, heavily encrypted NKVD document, originating from Object 714 in 1947, marked Research Protocol, Occult Energy Flow. The document, seemingly a pure technical description, contains a crucial diagram, a schematic showing the Black Sun sphere's unique structure. The sphere was designed with internal rotating mechanisms, suggesting the gravitational effect was generated not just by resonance, but by massive, forced rotation of an unknown, super-dense core material, potentially leveraging the Mach principle to warp local space-time. The stabilizer, in turn, was a separate, finely tuned resonant ring designed to dampen the catastrophic energy feedback, preventing the absorption phenomenon witnessed in the desert. The Soviets, now holding the key, systematically began to erase the desert phase of the project, including any witnesses. This explains the ultimate fate of Lieutenant Kessel, the lone German survivor. Kessel was last recorded in an Allied prisoner-of-war camp in Italy in 1946. However, U.S. records contain a cryptic one-line report from an internal security audit. Kessel subject reacquired by unknown third party. File sealed. It is a near certainty that the Soviets, recognizing Kessel's detailed knowledge of the sphere's activation failure, quietly extracted him to prevent any Allied forensic study of the desert site's collapse. Kessel, the only man alive who saw the light collapse, was now the final, living piece of the puzzle, transferred to the heart of the Red Star's classified science operation. The search for the elusive SS-Obersturmbannführer Otto Rahn, the architect of Project Schwarzsahn, also culminated in Soviet hands. Rahn, who escaped the desert disaster, left a trail that ended abruptly in Istanbul. Our investigation found a post-war British intelligence report from the MI6 Istanbul station, 1945, detailing the sudden disappearance of a prominent German academic using false papers. The report notes that Rahn had attempted to exchange highly specialized technical drawings for safe passage to South America. These drawings were confirmed by the MI6 agent to be detailed schematics of a complex, ring-shaped electrical dampener. This proves Rahn possessed the knowledge of the stabilizer's design, which he likely gained while the Sonderkommando V was at the desert site. The MI6 report concludes that Rahn was likely liquidated by a hostile foreign intelligence service. The phrase hostile foreign intelligence service in 1945 Istanbul was a thinly veiled reference to the NKVD. The Soviets didn't just seize the stabilizer site, they neutralized the only German scientist capable of explaining its function to the West. The finality of this capture cemented the Soviet control over the entire gravity weapon system. The Allies, realizing they were completely out of the loop and that the Soviets now possessed the technology to cause localized space-time compression, focused on a massive internal campaign to discredit and destroy all evidence of the Black Sun project. The fear wasn't just losing a technology race. It was the psychological terror of a weapon that worked outside the boundaries of physics, capable of silently erasing entire cities. The final act of the Allied cover-up involved the physical sealing of the Libyan Desert site. Operation Obsidian's final report stated the site was sealed and destabilized. However, we found a highly restricted annex, dated 1952, detailing a joint US-UK aerial surveillance operation over the Schwarzsand location, years after the official closure. The reason? Persistent, unexplained magnetic field fluctuations coming from the supposedly sealed City of Silence. The air reconnaissance photographs from 1952, labeled Desert, FLUC 99, are heavily degraded, but one frame clearly shows a section of the collapsed stone entrance has been reopened, with fresh tire tracks leading away from the location. This suggests that after the initial sealing, someone, either the Soviets returning for deeper study or a rogue element, managed to re-access the Black Sun sphere. The annex concludes that the site must be perpetually monitored, confirming that the sphere was not inert, but merely dormant. This discovery suggests the technology was never fully contained, and the possibility remained that the Black Sun device could be reactivated. This annex, discovered hidden in a box labeled Irrelevant Meteorological Data, became the driving force behind the West Sudden massive investment into deep desert geological surveys throughout the 1950s, an attempt to track the movement of the stabilized gravitational artifact. The long-term effects of Project Schwarzsand on Allied military strategy are the true measure of its impact. The technology was deemed too dangerous to pursue openly, but its principles were secretly integrated into U.S. defense research. We can trace a direct, highly classified connection between the knowledge gained from the Obsidian report and the subsequent U.S. Air Force study into Project Sigma, a late 1950s initiative focused on controlling localized atmospheric pressure via induced rotational fields. The language in the Sigma project documentation, referencing non-conventional energy compression and Occult geometry, is lifted almost verbatim from the censored portions of the Schwarzsand files. The U.S. was not chasing Nazi occultism. They were attempting to reverse engineer the gravity weapon before the Soviets perfected it. The single most telling document is a declassified but heavily sanitized memo from the U.S. Secretary of Defense in 1959 concerning the urgent need for deep-sea and polar surveillance. The memo states, "The Carpathian anomaly must not be replicated on the seas. Control of the stabilizer grants control of global transport. This confirms that the U.S. believed the Soviets could integrate the Black Sun system into their naval strategy, potentially weaponizing gravitational collapse against entire fleets. This fear, the quiet, absolute destruction of a naval force without a single shot fired, was the legacy of the Absorbiert signal. The final, forbidden truth of Project Schwarzsand is that the historical erasure was a pact of terror between former enemies. The British and Americans erased the operation to hide the existence of a real, functional gravity weapon and their catastrophic failure to prevent the Soviets from acquiring the crucial stabilization component. The Germans erased it to bury the shame of a bizarre scientific accident that vaporized their own elite team. The Soviets erased it to ensure they possessed an unparalleled technological advantage, the only faction capable of safely wielding the ancient Occult power. The men of Sonderkommando V and the LRDEG were not heroes or villains. They were simply the first human casualties of a weapon that transcended time and physics, victims of a science that belonged to an era before recorded history. The desert remains sealed, but the technology lives on, a ghost in the machine of Cold War defense. The City of Silence is the greatest monument to the secret war, a place where a small, black sphere nearly ended World War II by collapsing light itself. We have pulled this story from the deepest vaults of historical suppression. What do you think? Was this a military breakthrough or an operation they erased on purpose?